We're also seeing the end of a century in which we were told, and many of us believed, that the great struggle was between the state as an owner-operator of enterprises and the private sector as the owner-operator of the enterprises that produce goods and services. We were told this was the struggle between capitalism and socialism. And we've learned that that was a terrible mistake. Capitalism has a private form and a state form, just like slavery did, just like feudalism did. Let me drive the point home. During slaveries around the world, were there private slavers, masters who were private individuals running a business with slaves? Yes. Were there governments who had and operated slave enterprises? Yes. Nobody thinks that it wasn't slavery because the state was doing it alongside the private sector. Same in feudalism. We had state feudal, state lords with serfs, and private lords with serfs. And guess what? There's a pattern here. You start off typically with only the private, but the private gets itself into trouble and calls in the state. And so you get state slavery alongside private. Same thing, you get state feudalism alongside private. And guess what? When private capitalism gets into trouble, it calls in the state. That's why Mr. Trump had to wage tariff wars and trade wars, and Mr. Biden is doing basically the same. You call in the state, and the state then becomes a bigger and bigger factor. We're seeing the end of the big story of private versus state, because in fact, all the societies are combinations, mixtures of those. The United States has a bigger and bigger role for the state. The Republicans complain about it, the Democrats push it, but they all accept it and they all understand it has to be done, even if they give speeches to the contrary on the 4th of July. The greatest example of the hybrid, the combination of private and state capitalist enterprises is the People's Republic of China. By capitalist, I mean the relationship between the employer and the employee. That's the issue. Socialism wants to change that relationship, make it more collective, make it more democratic, make it more a relation of equals, not a relation of hierarchical, dominant, subordinate. That's not what capitalism allows, neither in its private form nor in its state form. What China has showed is that you can get a more rapid rate of growth with the hybrid, understanding its peculiarities, than you can if it's all state, like Russia, Soviet Russia, or all private, more like the United States and the United Kingdom. So they've become the model. And the United States denounces China as it becomes more of a hybrid itself. If you can't beat them, you end up joining them. I think that's an important thing for us to understand, that in the New World Order, we have economic nationalism and a hybrid of state and private employer-employee capitalism. Whatever names they give themselves, whatever their ultimate goals may be, these are the realities that we face. And that means we also have to face the reality that an immense global working class is emerging, shrinking and suffering in the West, explosively growing in the East and in the global South. And that's going to change everything as the capitalists in the West hunker down worrying about how long they can survive, the emerging power of the capitalism of the East, the nationalism gripping them, and the state-private hybrid that is their way of coping with the time ahead.